What would you sacrifice for love? On a stormy night, Officer Lee threw himself in front of a knife to save Sam from her vengeful stepsister, leaving him gravely wounded. As he lay unconscious, Sam heard his whispered confessions of love, words that pierced her heart and awakened the feelings she had long hidden. When Lee finally opened his eyes, the truth could no longer be denied. Two souls, bound by sacrifice and devotion, found each other at last. Don't miss this moving story of love and fate. Subscribe now and follow their unforgettable journey. The night was heavy with rain, each drop striking the ground like shards of glass. Darkness clung to the corners of the street, broken only by the pale, flickering glow of the street lamp outside Sam's house. She had returned home late, weary from the long day, when an unexpected chill rushed down her spine. From the shadows, her stepsister, the daughter of her stepmother, emerged with wild, furious eyes, clutching a gleaming knife in her trembling hand. "Sam!" she screamed, her voice hoarse with resentment. Before Sam could react, her stepsister lunged forward with desperate force, the blade catching the dim light, promising nothing but blood. Fear surged through Sam's veins, paralyzing her in that single, fateful moment. She could hear nothing but the pounding of her heart and the deafening roar of the rain. And then, like lightning, he was there. Officer Lee, who had just arrived to check on her safety, threw himself in front of Sam with the swiftness of instinct and the weight of love unspoken. Time seemed to shatter into fragments as the knife tore through his flesh instead of hers. His body convulsed at the impact, and a strangled gasp escaped his lips. The metallic scent of blood immediately mingled with the damp air. Sam's eyes widened in horror as Lee staggered, his uniform darkening with crimson. "No!" she cried, rushing to catch him as his knees buckled. Her trembling hands tried to stem the bleeding, but it was spreading too quickly, soaking through her fingers, burning her skin with its warmth. Rain poured harder, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for him, blurring the night into a cruel, merciless haze. Her stepsister dropped the knife, her face twisted with shock and disbelief, and fled into the darkness, leaving only the sounds of her footsteps fading into nothingness. But she could not spare a thought for her. All she saw was Lee lying in her arms, his breath shallow, his lips pale. His eyes, heavy with pain, still found hers with an intensity that made her chest ache. Why would you do this?" she whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. But Lee's faint smile was his only answer, before his eyes fluttered shut, his weight sinking into her, as if the world itself had grown too heavy for him to bear. In that instant, Sam realized she had not just almost lost her protector, she had almost lost the man whose silent devotion had been surrounding her all along. Days blurred into nights, and nights bled back into days as Officer Lee lay motionless in the stark whiteness of the hospital room. The rain had long ceased, yet Sam's world still felt soaked in sorrow, every hour heavy with fear. She sat by his bedside faithfully, her fingers entwined with his, unwilling to let go of the warmth that remained in his hand, fragile as a candle flickering against the wind. Machines beeped steadily, a cruel reminder that his heart still beat, but his spirit was caught in some unreachable place between life and death. Sam often spoke softly to him, her voice trembling but persistent. She told him about the little things, how the morning sun had painted gold on the hospital window, how the rain had washed the streets clean, how she hated the taste of coffee without him teasing her about adding too much sugar. She hoped her words might anger him, might guide him back, yet it was in his unconscious whispers that she heard the truth she had never dared to believe. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, when the world outside slept, Lee's lips would part to release fragments of his soul. "Sam, don't cry. I promise to protect you," he murmured, his voice so faint it trembled like smoke in the air. On other nights, he called her name with such tenderness it broke her heart anew. "I love you. If I can't wake up, remember that you were my reason." Each word carved deep into Sam's chest, leaving wounds more painful than the night of the stabbing. She had never thought she would hear such confessions, especially when wrapped in the stillness of his coma. The realization struck her with the force of a tidal wave. What she felt for him had never been just gratitude, never merely admiration for his courage. It was love, raw and undeniable, blooming painfully in her heart with every fragile breath he took. Sam found herself memorizing the lines of his face, the curve of his jaw, the lashes resting gently against his pale skin. She traced his hand with her fingertips, silently pleading for him to open his eyes, to scold her for worrying too much, to smile at her once more. She prayed that fate, so merciless that stormy night, might now show a shard of mercy. As she laid her head on his chest, listening to the faint rhythm of his heart, Sam realized she no longer feared admitting it. The truth had been inside her all along. She loved him, deeply, desperately, and irreversibly. And if he returned to her, she swore she would no longer keep it hidden. It was a morning bathed in soft light, the kind of dawn that seemed to breathe hope into weary souls. Sam sat by Lee's side as she had every day, her hand resting gently over his, her eyes heavy from sleepless nights. She had grown accustomed to the silence of the room, to the rhythmic hum of the machines, to the aching uncertainty of whether he would ever return to her. And then, like a fragile miracle, his fingers twitched beneath her touch. Sam's breath caught. She leaned forward, hardly daring to move, her eyes locked on his face. Slowly, painfully, his eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes clouded with weakness yet glimmering with life. For a moment, confusion clouded his gaze, but when it settled on her, a faint smile curved at his lips. "Sam." His voice was hoarse, but it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You came back to me." Lee tried to lift his hand, and though it was weak, Sam clasped it tightly, grounding him. He searched her face, his expression soft despite the pain etched in his body. "I told you, I'd protect you, even if it cost me everything." Those words shattered what little restraint Sam had left. She shook her head, sobbing quietly, but there was a light in her eyes now. "You fool," she choked, her lips trembling. "Why would you risk your life like that? Why would you carry all this alone?" Lee's eyes closed briefly, as though the weight of honesty itself was heavy, then opened again with a quiet resolve. "Because I love you." The confession slipped from him like a truth too long buried, simple yet powerful enough to still the air between them. Sam's heart clenched. For days, she had heard fragments of his love in the whispers of his dreams. Now, with his eyes open and his voice steady despite the pain, she knew it was real. She leaned closer, tears shimmering on her lashes, and pressed her forehead against his. "I love you too, Lee," she whispered, every word carrying the weight of her soul. I've been so blind, but I know it now. I love you. A smile, faint but genuine, spread across his lips as his arms weakly encircled her. Sam melted into his embrace, holding him as though she would never let go. In that fragile, tender moment, the shadows of fear and sorrow lifted, replaced by a radiance that belonged only to them. The world outside no longer mattered. They had found each other, through pain, through sacrifice, through love, and nothing could ever take that away.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Sam Review. Vậy là qua những chuỗi ngày nguy kịch vì bị em gái của Sam, con riêng của mẹ kế đâm, thì cảnh sát Ni đã được hồi phục kỳ diệu dưới sự chăm sóc của đội ngũ y bác sĩ và sự chăm sóc tận tình của chị gái cũng như của Sam luôn luôn kề cận bên cạnh anh. Anh đã hồi phục hoàn toàn và đồng thời trong cái giây phút cận kề sinh tử đấy thì Sam cũng đã thổ lộ với anh là Sam có tình cảm với anh. Liệu rằng sau cái biến cố ngày hôm nay thì cảnh sát Ni và Sam đã được yên ổn hay chưa? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ vào các tập tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy nhớ theo dõi. Tập tiếp theo sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày vào lúc 7 giờ theo giờ Việt Nam trên kênh Lý Tử Sam Review nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Bye bye.